Hi, and welcome back to Wicked Wreath's workshop. My name is Kristen, and I will be your host, your ghost host. As you can tell by my shirt, the next project we're gonna do is amazing, startling, shocking. The creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm so excited to do this piece because the creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite Universal monster. I'm going to put elements of the 1954 original and the 1955 Revenge of the Creature movie. I want to put nets and a harpoon, some chains and shackles, and then of course the Gillman looking like he's coming out of the Wreath to grab you and carry you back to the lagoon. The main and most important part of this is going to be me sculpting the creature. Also, excuse my army of Rizzos behind me without pupils. You know, sometimes I've been told by people that I traumatize them with my art, and I'm not helping the situation any. But that's what makes these movies so good. The feelings or the aesthetic that a film, TV show, or music can give you is the whole reason why I centered my career around making fan art. Like with The Creature from the Black Lagoon, it's the perfect mix between horror, sci-fi, and adventure. And the most beautifully shot scenes, especially for its time, like when the creature is swimming with Kay, it's just so magical and frightening. As you can see, I'm roughing in the form of the creature right now by using aluminum foil and monster clay. The aluminum foil is how you can bulk them up without using too much clay. Don't get weird, it's just an arm. Then I carefully Frankenstein his other arm into place. Now with the rough features in place and me weirdly caressing his armpit, I can start putting the rough features of his face in. And yes, I mean rough features. I put some clay where I thought his brows, nose, and fish lips would go. And this is the part where I keep going around defining the features over and over until I get the detail that I want. For his eyes, I use a glass cabochon, which is pretty much a glass ball cut in half. When you use another material for the eyes, like glass, baked clay, or plastic, it gives more options later for casting. Now that his face is completely smoothed out, let's wrinkle it back up with some stuff that makes it look like pruny fingers. I do this by rolling out long noodly pieces of clay and then blending it into his face. His whole face is pretty much wrinkles. Using the same noodly pieces to give him cheekbones, which he has 4 days. Then I'm going to give him some cool details in his under eyes. Then I keep blending the wrinkles up onto the bridge of his brow and on the top of his lip, and continuing to put more details under his eyes. I remake his eyelids and start adding more details into his brows. Now to give my creature a whole bunch of double chins, just like Jabba the Hutt. Arguably one of the coolest puppets of all time. And now I'm going to put some more wrinkles and blend those in. The creature definitely did not care about Botox. He's an old pruny fish. And what would the Gillman be without his gills? I build up 3 lumpy bumpy rows for his fish-like feature, blending it in and of course giving it some details. At this point I realized his brows were not big enough, so I added some more clay and redid the detail. Now it's time to smooth out some of those wrinkles. I use a handheld torch and some turpenoid, which is pretty much clay softener, to give him a blended natural look. He's so pretty. Then I use a rough sponge to clean off the little carvings or eye boogies and just go around and clean up his whole face. I give his fishy lips and his chin a nice shave before hitting it with the oh so satisfying hand torch. I just want to give him a grazing and not make him look like Two-Face. Then using my favorite tool, my fingies, to smooth out his lumpy bumpy lips. Now it's time to put some details into those fishy lips. If you ever look at somebody's lips, the lines don't just go straight up and down, but they get a crosshatch, so I make sure to add lots of lines in different ways. Then I use a sponge to get off all the little carving bits and a brush to smooth it out. Now I'm going to go back and define the details on the gills even more. Pretty much texturizing it by putting lots of little lines through it. And when I say lots of little lines, I mean 3 whole rows of little lines on each side. Though this step is tedious, like a lot of my work, I think it makes his gills have a really cool texture. Now with his face done, I can start working on the gills on his chest. I just pretty much want to make some transition gills, if that's a thing. Now I'm going to make these plate pieces for his arms that are kind of like an armor. That way he can defend off any stray harpoons. Now it's time to start the tedious process of putting little tiny bumps all over the rest of his skin. Hey, this seems like a great place for a montage! I'll never get sick of a montage, but you might, so let me know in the comments if I should stop doing that. Now we're going to give him his warts, which, because he's a sea creature, is probably actually sea barnacles, but as a witch, I approve of this either way. I just roll the clay into a little ball and smush these dots all over his face. I know what you're thinking, I missed his hands, but I didn't, I promise. I'm going to go back and sculpt those separately, because it will just take better in a mold. Now I'm going to prep him for the mold, which is the most satisfying part of this process. But first, before we do that, I want to show you what I got in the mail. Isn't he so cute? My friend Carolyn from Sweet Oddity Art on Instagram hand crocheted this and sent it to me, and it's just the best thing ever. Look at his little feetsies, he's so cute. Thank you so much, Carolyn. All right, back to it. I'm going to use Smooth On's Pink Goo Rebound 25. It is the best of the pink goos. This process makes me think that me and the creature are having this moment from Ghostbusters 2.
Will come from behind. Hey.
Sir, you all right?
Why are my drippings with goo?
Hey, man, I love you. I love Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd so much. Now at this point, the silicone has cured, and now I need to make a barrier for the fiberglass shell. This is because the fiberglass shell is rigid and needs to be done in sections, unlike the silicone that can be just cut and pulled off later. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting with a razor blade a slit into the silicone, then sticking very thin but rigid plastic into that slit to create the barrier. There's actually a couple different ways you can create a barrier, but this is my preferred method. And then I just stick masking tape over it to make sure it's secure. And of course, I make sure that I go all the way around. Then I brush on a wax on the barrier to help it not stick. I use Smooth On's Plasti Paste 2 for the fiberglass shell. And I promise this is not sponsored. Then I go around and cover all the pink goo and make the Plasti Paste as smooth as possible. If you attempt to try to use this stuff, please go watch one of their videos. I'm not a pro at it. Then after it cures, I make sure to get any spots that I missed. To prep for the bottom support shell, I need to cut the flange on the bottom of the silicone. Now I can flip it over and start pulling off the plastic barrier and prep for the next part of the shell by adding again more wax. This part is so important because you can't have the fiberglass stick to the other fiberglass. Trust me, that is not fun. And again, I'm creating another barrier so I can have 3 parts for this support shell. Now I wait for it to cure and then I pull off the support shell. Now I can cut slits into the silicone so I can get the clay sculpture out of it, hopefully in one piece. But you have to do this stuff so that way later when you cast it in resin it can come out all in one piece as well. And here I am freeing my little Gillman from the pink goo. Now I'm going to start casting him in resin, which I am sloshing around before it dries so it gets all the little cool details, and then doing another coat. With the resin cured, now I can add some expanding foam to fill out the rest of his cavity. Ooh, cavity, what a fun word. Another traumatizing part, at least for me, is cutting up the sculpture now that I spent hours and hours crafting to perfection. This needs to be done because the clay is reusable. Now I came up with an idea of how to make the back look like a swamp. I pretty much painted it and created a barrier so I could pour some resin to give it the water effect I'm looking for. And it turned out perfect. It gave the effect of a swampy lagoon. Now I'm going to give the creature a base coat of black. That way all the cracks and crevices are filled in. This step could have been skipped if I would have dyed the resin black, but I didn't. I see a white creature and I wanna paint him black. Now I'm going to use my favorite adhesive, spray foam, to secure him to the backboard and on the wreath. At this point I think he needs some hands. And you thought I would forget. No, I'm kidding. I bent some thick gauge wire into the shape of hands, but then I quickly realized that they need to be about half the size and bend the wires down. And for the creature, he has webbed hands, so I take aluminum foil and put it on half of the hand. Now I can start covering it in monster clay. Look, you can even see that I'm using the stuff that was made from him before. So sad. But then I quickly rough out his hand shape and give him some armor for his fingers and the top side of his hand. I'm actually going to do his nails separately as well, which I just roll out with polymer clay and I bake in the oven. And while those are baking, I'll just add a bunch of lumps to his skin. I take the hard clay nails and push it into the soft clay. That way it gives a little indentation for the nails to be put into later. I also make sure to label the nails, that way I know exactly which spot they go in. Molds out of the blue goo this time, also known as Smooth-On's Mold Star 16 Fast. And I'm just going to cast his hands and nails in resin and then paint them black for details. Then attach his hands to the wreath and to his other arm using spray foam. And do the same with his nails. I did use a mixture of foam and hot glue for this step so they would stay in place. Now to paint him his signature mossy green color, giving him the Wicked Witch of the West paint job.
Yeah.
Definitely on my list of pieces that I want to do. This part was really fun because it made me feel like a makeup artist, using green foundation-like paint to sponge all over his skin. Now I'm going to go back and paint all the dry foam black to hide it into the wreath. Now I can start adding some of the props. I draped this net over the top, used some popsicle sticks to put the shackles in place just to make sure I liked where it was, and also the harpoon. Now that I know I like the placement, I tie everything down with wire. Now it's time for the floral, which is one of my favorite parts and I spend way too much money on every time. But it's worth it. I just add my fake seaweed to where I find fit, which I find out later I should have put the lights on first, but that's okay. Now I'm going to use some UV resin to rough up the water to where his body is coming through, just to kind of give it like a ripple effect. Now I'm going to attach the fake harpoon spearhead, which I did 3D print, and struggle now with the lights. I always suggest to add the lights before you add the floral, because then you won't struggle like this. But it does become easier the shorter the light strand gets. Now to give his claws a creepy manicure. I start off painting them pitch black, then I add lots of yellow and orange highlights that later will match his eyes. Then I finish it off with a gel clear coat on top and realize he has better nails than I do. Now to give him lips that Angelina Jolie would be jealous of, dry brushing them to leave the black detail lines. Now to add the second net so it looks like it's spread out like it's trying to capture him, and go back to fix the foliage and finish it. For his eyes, I started off with a yellow base color and then added some orange around his pupils. Then I finished with a UV resin coat which makes his eyes very glossy. Now it's time for the reveal.
You better ask my mama how to make a monster. I'm the creature from a black leather lagoon. I am a beautiful monster from outer space too. Learn how to shake my hips in the sanctum, singing and give me tips, and then I like them. I'm a creature from a black leather lagoon.
A huge thank you to my Patreon coven, especially the new members, Witches and Warlocks, Katie, Rebecca Ord, Abigail Garcia, Liz O, Maria Castro, Tana, Marina Tejada, and Lady Sophie. The Wizards, Peridati, Afunya, Lauren, Wade Perry, and Stephanie Rahimian. And my new all-powerful Archmages, Blaine Parnell, Brenda, Natalie, Bob Shepard, Chelsea Daly, Jen, Cassandra Monroe, Sarah, Ellie Career, Jessica Grindstaff, Megan McLaughlin, Faith Pedroza, Thoroughly Modern Cadillac, Jen, Heidi V, Erica, Wee Witch, Kim Nolt, and Leah. Thank you all so much. You're the reason that I can keep making these fun videos. If you're new here, please like and subscribe and stick around because next is my big Halloween reveal. Happy spooky season, everyone!